Number 1. Marcel Creeper.
Summer after 5th grade, around the end of June, I went garage sailing with my mom and grandma in the neighboring town. Had a lot of good buys. The last place we hit up was a housing addition the edge of town, where a lot of old people and empty nesters lived. It was kind of boring, but I thought I would poke around just in case. My mom and gran let me go ahead of them while they browsed, so I went up to the next house. It looked pretty normal. I mean, it looked the same as every other house in the addition. Maybe not as many frills, but nothing out of place really. There wasn't a sign in the yard, but the garage door was open, and there were tables out. A guy was sitting in a lawn chair at the back of the garage. So legit, I suppose. I went in. There wasn't a lot of selection. An old coffee maker, throw pillows. There was a rack of plus-size women's clothing and shoes. No men's clothes or shoes. Anything that suggested a man lived there. The man at the back of the garage sat there, smiling the whole time. He was maybe in his late 30s, early 40s, mustache, bald at the top, and had a fringe of brown hair that tapered down his neck. He wore a wolf t-shirt and denim cutoffs. He kept crossing and uncrossing his very hairy legs, like with rhythm, and kind of swinging them. Beneath another table was a huge box of naked Barbies priced 50 cents a piece. I bent down to inspect them. First of all, the Barbie's hair was sticky and crusty, like someone put glue in them. Second of all, they smelt terrible, like rotten or something, body odor just inconceivably foul. I was pulling away when the man in the back of the garage started asking me questions like, how old was I? Where did I go to school? He asked me if I liked the Barbies. Not really interested, I said. He started talking about his Cocker Spaniel named Spiffy or something, and then let the dog out when it started scratching on the garage door. It started growling at him, like snarling, and I ran around to the back of the house. By then I decided I was done here. He hadn't really done anything, but he gave me the creeps. Leaving already? He sounded disappointed. I told him to have a nice day. I ran off to my mom and gran, but I didn't tell my mom about the creeper. I just told her he had a crap selection. Nothing she would like anyway. A week or so later, we saw on the news a man broke into a woman's house, tried on all of her clothes, molested her daughter, and hosted a garage sale at their house, at that housing addition.
Number 2. Alone in the Woods.
I was in college, female, and taking a course in outdoor survival. The course ended with a 3-day, 3-night wilderness solo. We were allowed to take a backpack, empty canteen, sleeping bag, knife, 6 matches, rope, a sheet of plastic, a change of clothes, extra socks, halazone tablets, small cooking pot, and spoon. We were not allowed to bring food or water since part of our training was in identifying edibles and finding a water source. Once I was dropped off, I had to hike in to find a spot to set up camp. First, I had to place a flag on a tree near my drop-off point so that I could be located 3 days later for pickup. I was loving life, just me and nature. I had no fears, even as night began to fall. I enjoyed the sounds of the woods all around me and didn't mind not having a tent. I built a small fire and had a great feeling of peace. I slept well that night, but woke up thirsty. My search for a water source began. Happily, I found a muddy stream, let the water settle in my pot, placed the tablets in the water, and boiled out for good measure. Yuck, what a crappy taste. But at least I was hydrated. All went well, and I had a great time until my last night. It was early afternoon on the last day and time to break camp. I cleaned up my camp area and hiked out to my drop-off spot. As I sat leaning against a tree, I heard the sound of a vehicle off in the distance. I figured that it had to be my pickup. As I waited, A vehicle that I had never seen before pulled up on the dirt path in front of me. Immediately, I realized I did not know the man who was driving. He gave me an odd look. My gut told me that he was bad news. He asked what I was doing there and if I was alone. I said that my friends were behind me breaking camp. He gave me a knowing look, got back in his vehicle, and rode off. I was terrified. I knew that I had to hide, and fast. I ran into the woods and hid. As I ran, I heard the car come back. I stayed as quiet as I could and remained hidden. I heard him get out of the car. I could hear him calling to me and walking through the brush looking for me. I was so afraid. Eventually, he gave up. I heard the car door slam, the engine start, and the car pull away. Going back to my drop-off point was not an option, so I began hiking through the woods, hoping I would find base camp. After walking for what felt like hours, I saw a forest ranger. I told him who I was and what had happened. He told me that I had done the right thing since a young woman had been raped the night before, and the police and Forest Service had been searching the area. Happily, he drove me to base camp, where I had learned that a girl in my class had had a creepy encounter with a man the night before. She had scared him away by blowing a brass whistle until help arrived. If there is anything to be learned from this, it is being sure to always trust your gut feelings and never camp alone.
Number 3. The man in the doorway.
It was a normal Saturday. I had woken up super early and decided to just be lazy all day. Around 10 p.m., I decided to get into bed and watch some South Park. I had fallen asleep around midnight, I think. The actual encounter happened very last. I had woken up at 4:43 a.m. with an overwhelming feeling of dread. It was dark, but it only took me a few seconds for my eyes to adjust to my surroundings. I looked at my clock, which is right next to the door, and I noticed a figure standing in the doorway, no more than 8 feet from me. He was staring at me with the sickest grin I have ever seen. The guy was a fucking monster, ugly and big as hell. I froze. I had no idea what was happening. I jumped out of bed after a few seconds and yelled, "Who is that? Get the fuck out of here now!" As I rushed to the door to slam it shut, the man slowly closed the door, still staring at me with that malicious grin. I locked the door and heard heavy footsteps walk away, very slowly. This guy wasn't here to rob me, I can tell you that. The way he shut my door was too calm for any two-bit thief that just got caught. I heard him walk to the basement door, and he left. I immediately called the cops, and they showed up within minutes. They did a walkthrough of my house and just chalked it up to some drunk guy wandering through houses. I told them that this guy could have been watching me for hours, for all I knew, but they obviously dismissed it. They left and I woke up my floor mate, a girl, who was asleep throughout the whole ordeal. She had gotten in a few hours after I fell asleep, and she said she locked the deadbolt and the normal lock. They were both unlocked. Well, simple solution. I changed the locks. Fine. But the thing that worries me the most is that this guy specifically came into my house. I don't know how he got in, and I don't know if he's watching me or someone in the house, but I am freaked the fuck out. Once I told everyone that was home, they didn't seem very concerned. What the flying fuck? I guess their opinions would change if they had seen this man like I had. His grin was so eerie, and his face was messed up. But the way he just calmly shut my door as I charged towards him is actually nauseating.
Number 4. Don't tell Mom.
We had just moved to a suburb, our first house in a decent but isolated part of town. She was 12, I was 7. Mom let us take our white German Shepherd for a walk. I remember the sun was setting over the desert landscape, but we weren't worried. It was nice to be able to walk unsupervised down the street, We lavished in our freedom and took our time, letting Kodak sniff and investigate everything. We had just let him off the lead and were watching him chase a rabbit. I guess that's why we didn't hear the car pull up, nor the huge man that was sneaking up behind us. Kodak was ways off, and suddenly he turned back and looked at us, and like a streak of white lightning, he raced back towards us. He flew. I'm for sure his feet did not touch the earth. He blasted past our waiting arms and landed on the man behind us. We turned, and Kodak was latched on the man's arm. Kodak was a big dog with big teeth and was absolutely shredding this guy's arm. The man eventually got him off of him, and Kodak took a stance between us and the man. We apologized to the creep, not realizing what danger we were in. The man offered a shaky smile and told us we were good kids, and stumbled off to his car. I remember there being a length of rope on the ground, which now I assume he had been holding. We looked at Kodak. He was growling and continued to growl until we made it home. He escorted us in the house. My sister told me, "Don't tell Mom or they'll kill Kodak for biting someone." I was so naive. We thought we were protecting our pet, but in actuality, he had saved one or both of us from a terrible fate. Much later, I learned my hometown is an area heavy in sexual predators and in violent criminals. Many of the surrounding communities had passed legislation that wouldn't allow them to live in their towns, so they lived in ours. No wonder our house was so cheap. Knowing now what was likely that man's intentions, I'm glad Kodak was there. Kodak died 5 years later. We buried him in the backyard and planted a tree over him.